let's ask really the deep question of like what's the biggest mindset shift that an indie filmmaker needs to make in order to embrace the idea that you have with Blockbuster?
Well, picking just one's going to be hard, but I'll try.
Okay.
High up on the list is taking responsibility for every aspect of it, right? So as soon as you start thinking, well, I'll do the filmmaking, I'll make the movie, but someone else will handle distribution or marketing or sales. Well, then you've abdicated your independence, right? You're now reliant on some other entity, some other company that's taking a cut in order to get a successful outcome. And so part of it is it's really hard. Like I'll say that up front. It's not like it's an easy thing to just go full independent. A lot of us do it out of necessity because we're not getting the jobs at studios. Maybe we don't live in LA or Atlanta or wherever they're filming the next Netflix thing. But okay, so sometimes we shift into the indie side because necessity. But as soon as you do that, if you're still relying on, well, I'm going to make my movie, but I'm going to need a distributor. So I have to get into a festival. I have to have people show up. Those people have to be development or acquisition executives. They have to like my movie enough to want to offer me money for it. And I hope that that amount of money is more than I spent on it. That's abdicating a lot of responsibility for the outcome for yourself, the film, and the investors and the audience. Like the audience will never see it if those six things in order don't happen. And so, mindset shift one really is figuring out how can you take responsibility for every aspect? And often the answer is, well, you produce it for cheap or nothing, like to start, because you have to keep that balance of if I'm going to make $10,000 off this, if that's the high end, if that's the average of what I could considerably make from this project, you better produce it for less than that if you want to be profitable. But guess what? If you can make it for 8 and then make 10,000 on the back end, you're more profitable than a lot of massively huge expensive studio movies. And so
Right.
congrats, you're profitable. Now you just keep doing that and growing the scale project over project.
And how have you seen this shift over the last few years from, the much more traditional models that were in place for so long, versus where things are at now? And like when for you did all of this click in to really go down this road and just say, no, this is possible. You can build a business, be creative, and own the entire process and handle it yourself.
I think it happened progressively over the 4 feature films that I produced. And so I can't necessarily speak to a single moment because I can see a lot of moments where I had an idea or a question or a thought or a light bulb moment. But on every one of the 4 projects, so the first 2, I was like the first one I was line producer UPM. The second one I was producer, line producer UPM. The third one I was producer, line producer. And the fourth one I was producer, line producer. So I have this kind of different experience across the 4 films, but in each one, I could point to something where I was like, why did we make that choice? Not that I thought the people doing it were dumb. I just assumed that I was dumb and didn't know something that they knew. And so I would sit there and I would, take notes. I would just keep track of like, okay, why did we raise this money and put this movie together without a plan for distribution? Why did we pick this distributor over a different one? Why did we spend money on marketing, but it was spray and pray instead of hyper targeted? Like, we're not a studio. We don't have the budget to do spray and pray marketing. Why did we do that? And it wasn't like, you guys are dumb. Why are you doing this? Again, it was just, what do I not know that they seemingly know because they're making these decisions? And after the, third movie, I was like, okay, I think there's a different approach to this. And what would that look like? And I asked the question over and over again, what would have to be true in order for me to get this outcome, right? If I wanted to make, let's say, $10 million per movie on a $1 to $3 million budget spend, like all in production, development, production, post production, marketing, distribution. If I spend 2.5 or 3 million, how can I make 10? That was kind of the big question. And it
Yeah.
was like, because if I can do that, I can do it forever. There's no question. Like, I will be able to raise money. I'll be able to get whatever projects I want. Actors will want to work with me, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it's the
Sustain
Blumhouse
yourself
model.
during the lean times. You can make it all happen.
Yeah, 100%. And then it also, like, that was kind of the first question. Then it became, well, what would have to be true in order for me to do 3 movies a year? Because that would keep myself busy enough. I'd be able to take 1 or 2 months off every year and just kind of like go to London and hang out with my family or whatever. And also, 3 movies a year means like if I'm paying somebody 30 grand as a crew member over a 4-month period, well, that's pretty sustainable for them too. And they could do 3 projects, maybe a couple of one-off like commercial gigs. and they could take time off and have money to like live their life and save some money. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
like I'm also simultaneously thinking about the crew people that I love and that I, work with. So it just was a lot of what would have to be true in order for that outcome to occur. And then asking that question over about a year and a half time span was like, oh, I think the answer is a film fund. So I'm doing a $10 million 10 picture fund we'll do 10 movies in 4 years, and then we'll raise the next fund and the next one and the next one. And that's how I got to that point. So I don't know if that directly answered your question about like what was the shift, but for me, I've never worked in the studio system. I've never worked on studio movies. And so I don't really know there. I am paying a lot more attention now and trying to anticipate what's happening in Hollywood and with the studios and streamers. I just think that they are so not caring about the outcomes for independent filmmakers that it doesn't make any sense for us to strive to partner with them until they change course, which I don't think they'll ever do.
Right, and they're not necessarily even built for that. Like, it's almost like the business model wasn't built to embrace the type of approach that you're taking. It was built to enrich a different type of class of person or company than what we're talking about in the independent space. And
Yeah.
what I have often seen, and especially in your blogs and in your podcasts and so on, is just that approach of, look, like they didn't design that system for you, they designed it for themselves, and we have to create that truly independent. That's what independent is like, independent of that system means
Yeah.
not even starting there, like just starting with where you're at right now, because you're in Utah, we're in British Columbia, and people might be anywhere in any state or any province in North America.
It's weird to look at it from the outside because economically it's a weird model, right? Everybody tried for years to follow the Netflix model because they were quote unquote making money. And it's like, wait, are they? That's another story for another day. But like they obviously understand that level of business way better than I do because they're doing it, right? But they built businesses that extract all of the money out of the process to benefit the business. So
Mhm.
filmmakers are struggling across the board, top to bottom, whether you're the top Hollywood. We had Michael Bay at South by this year with a independent documentary project that he couldn't get made elsewhere. So he did it himself. Michael Bay, like
Yeah.
a
Right.
director that everybody has heard of, whether or not you love his movies, he's a known entity and should be able to walk into 5 studios and get 5 offers and then go
One
do
of
it.
the
But
most
that's
successful commercial directors of all time,
exactly,
right? Like,
exactly.
yeah, and if he can't get a movie off the ground, then
Right. So the system that they built, they being the studios, is really good, exceptionally good at extracting every last cent out of the process and having it go to the company. And what that means is now none of the money is going to the filmmakers. And so how do you get movies made? Because it's not profitable for them to go back to the studio and say, well, I want to do another one of those. Because they're like, I'm on food stamps. Like, wow, how am I supposed to do this full time without being paid a full time wage? And the system, it's not built that way. And so they devalued a movie to the point of essentially free. Like, I think Amazon Prime pays 3 cents per stream or something like that.
Right.
That's the deal you get if you put your movie on Amazon Prime streaming. It's like, okay, so if the value of a movie, which costs millions of dollars, is 3 cents, how on earth are you ever supposed to be profitable making those things? So I think for independent filmmakers, you have to this goes back to answering your question about mindset shifts, is like you have to opt out of that system. That system will not allow you to be profitable because they are better at sucking out the money than you are. And so you have to go direct to your audience. You have to own the projects. You have to own your distribution channels, and you have to fight to maintain the value of the thing you created. And so I'm looking forward to selling directly to an audience of people a DVD that costs, or not a DVD, but a DVD or a streaming, purchase on Apple TV or on Amazon Prime, the purchase side, not the streaming side. I mean, I sell my book not on Amazon, but I sell it for $20 for the paperback and $35 for the hardback, and I sell a couple every day because people understand it's a direct relationship and they're supporting an independent thing. And it's not necessarily about that. It's just I've positioned it as something that's valuable. And if I put it on Amazon and then they decide one weekend to put it on sale for 99 cents and I didn't choose to do that, they're devaluing something I made without my consent. And that
Mhm.
feels really icky. And that's what the streamers and studios are doing every single day. So it's just not an environment where independent filmmakers are going to be able to be profitable. Full stop.
yeah.
So So that kind of leads you though to the obvious question, which is so. And obviously, we can't predict 5 to 10 years down the road because who would have predicted what's going on now 5 to 10 years ago? But if you're thinking of the landscape today or tomorrow or this next week, you've been attempting this with your last two, with the Carpenter and with Faith of Angels. How would you put together a movie project like that, or how did you together a movie project like that in order to take advantage of the methods that you're talking about?
I think I'll speak specifically to going forward how I'm planning to do it, because while I was a producer on both The Carpenter and Faith of Angels, and thanks for just like knowing who I am and the movies I've made, like that's really cool that you spent the time like knowing the projects I've worked on. But I can speak to going forward because I'm not the decision maker on those projects and the distribution and the structure and all those things. So going forward, like it's already happened. It's just now we need to catch up to it to where we can actually make it profitable. But it's about going direct to your audience. And the most recent example that we're seeing of this is Mark Duplass partnering with the Independence Project, which is Seed and Spark and Kinema. Seed and Spark helps with fundraising, and Kinema helps with distribution for indie filmmakers. He has a TV project that he took to Tribeca in like 2023 and hasn't been able to get it picked up anywhere by any of the networks or streamers. And so now he's taking another self-produced, self-financed indie TV project and going direct to the audience. And he put it up on Seed and Spark and tried to raise a couple $100,000 for the marketing and P&A. He's not concerned about recovering his costs from producing the project, but he'll probably recoup some of it. But he's using the audience that he's already built. He's got a couple 100,000 people who follow him online. I don't know if he has an email list. If not, he definitely should have an email list. Mark, call me, dude. I'll
Yeah.
get you set up. But that's the method, that's the process, that's the strategy going forward. Like you have to have a direct relationship with an audience of people who want what you're selling. So it's not about convincing an audience of people to buy what you're supplying, because that doesn't work either. That's supply side selling. We can't just say, well, I made this horror thing and your audience is full of faith-based people. That's a disconnect. You're not going to sell anything. So you have to have a direct relationship with an audience of people large enough to support the work you're doing. And so it goes back to when we did Faith of Angels. This is a good example. We, as a test, we're like, what is the value of our audience? How many of our audience could we get to come over and like kickstart, or not invest, but kickstart the P&A, right? So let's see if we can raise 25,000 from an audience of about, let's call it 15,000 people that between Garrett and I, we could reach for free. Social media, email list, texting our family and friends, right? So we set up a Kickstarter, launched it, told everybody about it. 30 days later, we had $2,500. Now, we did not spend a full time 30 days, like every hour of every day on the Kickstarter campaign, because we were putting these movies in theaters. We were focused on that. But that was a test that gave us some information that was really valuable. 15,000 people, $2,500. Okay, now you can start to actually match like a value per person, not like inherent person value, but like monetary value, right? So
Right.
if I know, like, let's for easy math say we were able to raise $15,000 on Kickstarter off of an audience of 15,000 people. Every single person is worth $1. Okay, that's information that you can use for your next project, which
Yeah.
means, oh, if you actually need $100,000, then you probably need an audience of 100,000 people, right? Expand that out, and that's just the upfront, the Kickstarter part. Well, what about theatrical? Like you can look on Box Office Mojo and go, okay, about 25,000 people saw The Carpenter in theaters, and about 60,000 people saw Faith of Angels in theaters. And that's information that we can now use because we know how much we spent on the marketing and distribution of the movie. We can go, okay, well, the value of our marketing dollars, if we spend, I don't know what the amount was, let's call it $250,000. What if we spend that and make $250,000? Well, okay, we're break even. That's great. We had a theatrical release, but we probably lose money because the theater takes half, right? So
Yeah.
you really need every dollar you spend to turn into $4 or $5 from the box office to be profitable. So again, we're testing these things and going, if we do this, what's the result? Take that information, apply it to the next one. So now I'm getting a little long-winded, but I'll wrap this thought up.
No, not at all. This is great.
This is absolute. Like if I could be writing notes right now, I would be taking them. But I'm going to listen to this podcast later and write down everything you just said because
I was like, good luck snipping this up for a 1 minute short on YouTube.
Exactly.
I need to learn to speak in 60-second thoughts, but I don't have that skill set yet.
no,
But the idea going forward for the fund, for example, is okay, if I'm going to need, like, again, what would have to be true for me to get $10 million box office off of every single one of our movies? Okay, well, that's a million people buying a ticket. Again, easy math. I'm doing a lot of rounding here. The average price per ticket right now is like $10.78. Okay, whatever. I'm not going to do that math. $10 million, 1 million people need to buy a ticket. What has to be true in order for me to be able to sell a million tickets to a movie? Well, I don't have a million person audience, and I'd probably need a 20 million person audience because generally speaking, you need 20 times the number of actual buyers in your audience
Yeah.
because that's a
Right.
5% conversion rate. So if I want to sell a million tickets, I need to be able to reach 20 million people. Well, I have an email list of 2,500 people. So I've got a long way to go in order for that to be true. But I mean, look at Angel Studios. They've done that. They have an email list of 20 something million people, is my guess, because they can get a million people to the box office at opening
Right.
weekend for every one of their movies. And they just crossed a million guild members on their streaming platform. Okay, so if the laws apply there, they've got a million paying customers, they probably have 20 or 25 million people that they can contact between social media and an email list.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah.
So it can work. It just means that you've got to do what Angel did and build up an email list of 20 million people. Can
Yeah.
everybody do that? No. Is everybody going to? No. But if I'm trying to not just be Daren Smith producer, but actually have a fund and a company, like a little independent studio, well, yeah, it's very realistic that I would work towards getting an email list of millions of people in order for that thing to be successful. So
Mhm.
A24 is doing a good job of that. Neon's doing a good job of that. They understand the relationship with the audience and how valuable that is. So they're building the audience relationship, not just the distribution channels.